All right, we are live. What's up, everybody?
What's going on? Bow, 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 bow.
Bam,
Foghorn.
bam, bam. Vroom, vroom. Motor
Vroom,
core
vroom.
kicks in.
Yes. A lot of sounds, a lot of obnoxious sounds tonight.
Yeah, it's like a police academy up in here.
Yeah, it's like I'm the police academy guy, Mr. Police Academy. But really, my name is Christian, and you're Killian, and this
True.
is The Bias Cut, the one and only fashion podcast hosted by two losers, and that's how I'll begin it until we have a better intro line. I'm Christian, like I said. That's Killian, like he said. And we're keeping up the hot heat. We have another special guest tonight.
Great musical group as well. Hot Heat. Saw them open for a Weezer and the Foo Fighters in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
How many years ago?
Oh God, at least 10. At least 10. Yeah, we have a guest tonight. We have a big guest.
We've got to get. We've got KARSTEN, aka Meme Saint Laurent, on the pod tonight. He's gonna join us about 15 minutes in. That don't leave. Just wait for him.
We're here to like warm up the crowd. You know how on Jimmy Kimmel, they have the guys that go out and they're like, please, when he gets out here, please clap.
Please smile. Please.
Yeah, be really excited. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
For the next 15 minutes.
So like one of my like great New York, I'm living the dream, living the life. This was like 10 years ago, maybe. I went and saw The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and I saw The Colbert Report with Stephen Colbert. And when I saw that, when I saw The Daily Show, the guy who came out to like warm us up was Jon Stewart, and that was pretty funny.
Not bad.
Yeah, he was funny and witty. You know, he was sharp.
I miss that double feature. That was
me too.
Another era. You know what I mean?
Another era of fashion and of television.
Speaking of another era, we're going into a new era here because I'd say one of the most solid fashion mainstays is shaking things up. Because Jeremy Scott announced that he is leaving Moschino.
Oh my God.
I know. And honestly, I was legitimately shocked by this because I feel like maybe it was no better designer brand matchup than the Jeremy Scott Moschino marriage. It just felt like a perfect fit, and it seemed like he was doing exactly what he wanted to be doing and had kind of free reign to do whatever he wanted. So I was legitimately a bit surprised by the announcement. I don't know. What was your reaction?
Well, I mean, you just saw it. I put my hand over my mouth and I was like a gasp, a gape.
And that was the first time you heard that. So yeah, that was your honest first reaction to the news. Right?
Everything I do on this podcast is honest, and my first reaction, and Killian and I have never even met before. I mean, I have the same take you have. It's like Jeremy Scott was perfect in that role, it feels like.
Yeah.
Because Moschino was already a little whacked, and he was always a little whacked, and it was kind of perfect. You know, at the end of the day, this is like how I think about these things. Kind of like when we were talking about Demna and Balenciaga and whether or not he should stay there.
Right.
I think that these freaks, these psychos, I think that it is perfectly reasonable and probably best for them to like step down after a few years, because I assume this is like a job that is just so demanding that like you're even if you're still killing it, you know, your shelf life doing this kind of thing and your own brand.
I will say if there's one thing that Fear of God does right, it's that they don't do the like spring, summer, fall, winter grind plus, you know, resort, whatever, pre this, you know, everything. They just, I think they do like first collection, second collection. They might take 2 years between them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that feels like a much more natural way to work because the grind of it is just absolutely nutty. And I wouldn't be surprised if it ground him out, especially Jeremy Scott has also for the past couple of years been doing that Amazon Project Runway spinoff. He's been one of the main, he's like the Tim Gunn of that show, essentially.
Yeah.
He's, at the Met Gala as a guest rather than just as a designer. So he's got like his own obligations as well that can't be easy to keep up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, ultimately, if the question was like, where is Jeremy Scott going to go next? I don't think he is. I don't know. I mean,
really?
I think that.
Okay.
Do I think that he's going to take an appointment as a creative director for another house? I don't know. I don't necessarily. I mean, like, I'm speculating. I just assume maybe he doesn't want to or cares. And like, the other part of me also thinks that I think he is 100% an innovative designer. But I think that in his wake, there's a lot of fresh blood that could be just as weird now, could come to Machino and bring that weirdness. Off the top of my head, Telfar?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
Telfar also does a bunch of weird. I will say, first off, in honor of the man.
Woo!
Mainline OG Jeremy Scott over here. The one thing I own by Jeremy Scott or Moschino. Yeah, it's interesting. Telfar
that Telfar thing I said was pretty interesting.
Telfar is funky in a very different way, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100%.
Jeremy Scott is funky in the sense that it's like very nostalgic, cartoonish, like reference heavy.
Looney Tunes.
Yeah, exactly. And Telfar is just like innovative in a weird way, like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I didn't expect you to have any kind of response. I was just setting up the next segment.
Okay, well, in that case, let's absolutely do that. So Telfar,
wow.
They announced that they are going to be doing something called live pricing. I believe it's a new pricing model that they're rolling out, and I honestly don't understand how it works or how it's sustainable, but I will do my best to explain it.
Yeah, nobody knows.
How it happens now for pretty much every brand selling anything is they release products at their retail price, the MSRP, right? So let's say it is a sweater and the MSRP is $500. That's the most it'll ever sell for. That's the maximum the brand is hoping to get out of that sweater.
No doubt.
Over time, at Saks or Essence or whatever, the sales start, and that is knocked down from 500 to 400 to 300, and then maybe it finally sells at 200, right? And that's the life cycle. It goes down until the next season, the new delivery comes and it starts all over again, right? So Telfar is basically flipping that. They're saying we're going to start at our wholesale lowest price, and then as the item stays in stock, the price raises.
Dang.
What do you think about this? It's very odd to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, based on like what we were just reading a second ago, it's like they're treating the products like stocks. Like, if they're more in demand, the price goes up. Like, this is like honestly,
that's what I thought. But then I read more about it, and it's actually the opposite. If the piece sells out before the price raises too much, it stays at that lower price forever for future restocks.
What? So the most garbage pieces, what? They're just going to be like $20,000, $30,000. They just never move, and the price just goes up.
I mean, pretty much. That's exactly what it means. Though.
This doesn't make any sense.
The most popular pieces go for the lowest amount, whereas the things that sit raise up to the higher amounts. I don't understand how it plays out for them.
I mean, like, honestly, it's super interesting. I think it's cool that they have an idea that is like out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I don't know. Z just made this comment, so it makes people want to buy before it goes up. I guess. I mean, Z.
I mean, I don't. Argument.
As far as I'm concerned, you're a stranger, but I doubt you're an economist. And I feel like we need an economist to figure this stuff out, because it's like, if you as a brand are selling all of your products at wholesale price, hypothetically, and this is all, there's like all sorts of rigmarole, but you can kind of guess that it costs the brand a quarter of the price to make it. So they sell it double that quarter to wholesalers, and wholesalers double it again. So that's kind of the usual markup. But I think that, and that's kind of just a rule of thumb, that could totally not be the case. I wonder if you're selling all of your garments, I mean, like in a store, if I went to buy the Telfar bag in a store and it's at wholesale price, are they losing money on that product? I just don't understand the how that would even work, you know?
I think Z actually may be getting at it here now that I'm playing it out in my head, because what they could be doing is making a play for scale as opposed to cost. Maybe they're hoping to hit another level in terms of the volumes that they're able to manufacture by generating additional sales at a lower price that makes up for it.
Like, what does that mean? What are they blitz scaling now? Like, they're like, we'll just keep burning money until we control the clothes market.
Well, this is the thing. Telfar, I don't know, like they do these live streams. It's like a home shopping network type deal. And it really seems like they have a focus on making their product available to as many people as possible. Like, it seems less like a luxury exclusivity thing than them just trying to get it out to whoever wants it. And this may just be a play again in that direction.
Yeah. We have a comment. Kennedy said that there are two ways to get exclusivity: barrier by price or barrier by scarcity. Making it cheap to begin with to sell out quickly and drive scarcity is not entirely new strategy. I don't disagree with you, Kenny. Kennedy. But I'm thinking like what about Supreme? Let's just consider Supreme for a second. The clothes are, I think hypothetically the clothes are priced reasonably, but they're priced for like how expensive they are to make. Like,
right.
They make their hoodies in Canada. The hoodies cost like $70 to $100. And that's what they're selling it at. And there's, artificial scarcity. They just don't make a lot. But, it's like Telfar, obviously, like presumably they're not making money off the resale. And I guess it's curious. It's curious, at least. If it is like a face or false scarcity thing, or there's like other machinations involved, maybe it's kind of like a streetwear model where they just want you to think you can't get it. We should have an economist as our next guest.
That would be a fair thing to do, honestly, because I feel like there are probably nuances to this that neither of us have the big brain power to reckon with here.
I can't reckon with it.
I guess you pretty much guarantee that you're going to get a boom at any drop, right? Because everybody who's legitimately interested is going to want to get in at the lowest potential price. And
what? And then what? Then the price stays there?
Maybe they've done the math that then the additional people who couldn't get in early enough and get it at the next higher price tier makes up. It sounds wrong as I'm saying it, but
I really don't get it, but maybe we're talking about it.
I think maybe they're here to save us from this subject, because it's kind of blowing our brains up, and I think we've had enough of Telfar for the night. So do you want to welcome our guest on?
Sure. Yeah. I don't see him. Is he ready to come on? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, KARSTEN.
Hey.
What's going on?
Not much, man. Not much. It's good to see you both.
Yeah. I haven't seen you in a dog's age. Thank you for coming on the show.
Huh?
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago that I think the last time we spoke.
Well, it was right when you were like starting like new things and stuff like that. I remember talking about that, and now it's like, and I remember the last time we talked, it was right when I was like, "Hey, man, I have an idea," and I was like, I might start a brand, and now
Ooh.
here we are.
And now,
There we
are you wearing the hoodie right now?
I am wearing the hoodie. It's not the best lighting in my room, but yes, I am.
That's sick. Okay. So I guess the first thing I want to ask you to do, just for our audience, you want to like introduce yourself, say like who you are, what your deal is.
Yeah. My name is KARSTEN KROENING. My last name is pronounced KROENING, even though it looks like Kroning. I started out as a YouTube memer, kind of Instagram memer person. So I used to post little pictures online that people thought were funny. From there, I've been doing YouTube. I've been doing mainly focused on like YouTube education, a little bit of lifestyle in there. And as of recent, this past 2 years, what I've worked on and finally kind of got it down with my last drop just ending actually last night, is when we closed the shop. I've been working on my own clothing brand and bringing that into the world.
Sick. Applauses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I think it's sick that you finally got it off the ground. I encourage people to watch. I watched one of your recent videos where you're showing a lot of the behind the scenes of like the editorial imagery stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's sick to see somebody be able to pull that off. And like you mentioned, we talked about this 2 years ago.
Oh my God, I know.
And
I had a completely different outlook of what I thought it would look like 2 years ago. And it's so funny mentioning it started for 2 years. I've mentioned that in a few videos. And so many people have thought that it like took me 2 years to like sketch out the hoodie or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, no, like production, like finding materials and sourcing. But yeah.
So I'm really curious now. When you say that it looked so different when you first started thinking about it, when you the very first times you started conceptualizing starting a brand, what were those early visions like, and how are they different from what you ended up doing?
Well, like when I first started thinking about a brand, like I was like 15, right? Like I was like a kid in the store. And then when I first like started thinking of some solid concepts, the two concepts that I first thought of was this hoodie, and a like trucker jacket, which I think I showed Christian, and that will never be that. I went through samples of that, and then like I finally got a sample that I was like, oh, I should release this, and they're like, yeah, it's gonna cost about $200 to produce each one, and I was like, okay, I'll be down the line. But yeah, it looked a little bit different in that I think I was still forming a lot of my brand identity and like kind of got in the design process, and I like started. I had a much like wider variety of like things that I wanted to design, and now I've kind of narrowed that down to more like. Starting off for like the first few drops, it's definitely going to be more like essentials or basics. But yeah, no, it looked, I mean, it had like the same design flavor. I remember, I think I tossed around a logo to you, Christian. I don't know if I tossed around to you, and it was just like in cursive, and it looked, everything was a lot more like when I started like the design process, everything was like a lot more like, off-brand Rick Owens, I think would be the best way to describe it.
As we all aspire to be, of course. But I guess on that kind of idea, because if people are unfamiliar, you have your first item is this hoodie. You're calling it the Swans hoodie, and you just kind of hinted there's more stuff on the way. Where is your brand? How do you define it? Like, what is its kind of je ne sais quoi?
Right. I thought one thing is that like right now, I think it's a good question. Where is the brand? Obviously, a reason this took a long time to produce and get out is because I wanted to have a fully fledged like business plan. And I think I talked to a lot of people. Like I was of so much privilege to have a lot of industry connections, whether that be YouTubers, Instagrammers, or like actual people who work at brands like Helmut Lang or HBA. And so I just got a lot of things to talk about. And one of the things I realized is that me just releasing clothing or like a piece when I had like two ideas wasn't going to cut it, because it's necessary to have like a built out vision. Right. And so when I have things, the way I have things planned out right now, I probably have like, I want to say like 25 things like where we have like solid ideas that are like lined up for sure. And then like just like probably things until the end of time to like as far as that's like
time immemorial.
Yeah.
So
That's wild.
yeah, like I spent a long time just like learning how to like get things down, make like mock-ups and stuff like that. And so right now, like I'm definitively, I have like up until next spring, I know like what items I'm gonna release, and we're getting the final like stages of those all like finished.
That's incredible, dude.
That
So
is.
who are you working with? Is this a one-man band, or how many people are involved in the project?
It's a one-man band in terms of like I am the only person who's doing design. Like I have a photographer who I've been working with who's great, and he helps with that. Obviously there's a lot of people who like have moral support or advice, but it's mainly just me. The only other person like I have to give like props and kudos to, like big time, is like Tommy Pointer, if you're familiar with him. He's another actor. But he's like, I grew up with him, right? And so
Yeah.
he's been like a huge input on the design process, helping me like find what is my style and like saying like go in this direction, this is where you're going. But also like he like helped me out crazy when it came to production, because that was where I struggled with. And he'd just been doing it longer than me, and he'd been looking for factories, because I shopped around for factories for a long time.
Wow.
It's brutal, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing, yeah. I mean, I at least personally, I think it's so fascinating, like to see, like just to hear that you think you have like 25 items that are sure on the way.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I mean, I think all the kids at home are wondering, like, can I do this? Can I fantasize about starting my own brand? It's a segment that we have on this podcast. So, I guess like the first thing I would want to ask is like, what do you need? How much capital do we need to pull together? What do you think are like some of the first tips you would give to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, like, first like thing is like capital is like huge. Like physical monetary capital. It takes a lot of money. It's man, like I think about like the sunk costs, and this first drop was amazing. It was great. It was successful. I feel very, very thankful.
Hey.
Shout out to anybody who bought a hoodie. It was, for someone who's never launched a clothing item before, it was actually a great, amazing turnout.
That's sick.
With that being said, like with all the sunk costs that I've already had, it's like as a business so far, not super profitable.
Sure,
it's not like made a profit, but like thinking about like the fact that like I had to do like a good amount of samples before, how I had to invest in packaging material. A lot of these like materials and things I'm getting are evergreen for a couple of years, right?
Okay.
So, like, things have to like, but like just like the resources you need, it's a lot of money. It's not like a couple $100 thing if you're doing it.
No, yeah. Like I'm curious, speaking of the monetary side of it, there's so many directions to go here, but I'm curious, you mentioned it's kind of a basics piece for this first one, and maybe the first few, right? Not to say there's not interesting stuff going on there, the paneling and everything.
I want to get into that. I want to know.
Absolutely. But it is a sort of basics piece, and the price point is aggressive, I would say, at least in the space that we exist in. So how did you land on that?
So I kind of struggle with the whole price point thing. It's definitely aggressive for the space we're in, but like the space, like when I was like looking at like all of the brands, it's so diverse, right? With price points, like it's so interesting because there are people who will charge like in this like YouTube space will like charge, like 80 to 125 is what I found was like the average price for a hoodie. There's some people who charge a lot more too in the YouTube space.
Right.
Like for example, Kenny Wajima I think charges like 100.
You beat me to it. You beat me to it.
Like no, and there's also like brands like Balenciaga which pay hundreds for like a hoodie.
Anything. Yeah.
And so it was just like, for me, the reason I landed on the price wasn't necessarily because I felt like some sort of way like I need to have a price, but it was just like, how can I like get the best materials, the best production, more like ethical production for a good price, that's somewhat affordable. And I thought $150 was like a fair price to like kind of aim for. When I was like looking to release this piece, I knew I wanted it to be between $100 and $200 for like the cost of the item. And I was able to kind of get halfway there. Ideally, you know, the thing I thought about a lot with this was like, how do I like kind of price it right? Because the truth of the matter is, and I found this out by looking at the comments of all of my things, is like people, the way one of my friends put it is that people want like the highest quality thing ethically made for the cheapest price. Like,
they want it to make them hotter. They want to be more popular. They want like, and all those things. And it never, there's no sins involved. And it was made only by angels.
And the truth of the matter is you can't do all of those things. You can do like a degree of each of them. Like, man. Like, and so I tried to balance it out as best as I could. It's definitely aggressive pricing because this is a high quality item. I wanted to give somebody something like that's just gonna last for a little while. But yeah, like, I don't know. It's just what I could do with the giving a proper item, I think.
That's sick. I mean, I think that anybody making anything wants to do it right. But I think that at least I haven't done this, but I expect based on your experience, you're dumping 2 years in, you're already dumping all this money. At some point, you probably are like, well, I got to make money off of this. So I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities to kind of cast aside any like ethics or like capacity to maintain that. So props to you, dude. I want to ask about the panels. So you describe it. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. The perfect fit, but like the fit has a lot to do with it. Where did that come from?
So originally, it's super interesting. When I was like designing my earlier pieces, like the thing I like kind of found is like I didn't like playing with silhouettes as much. It was harder for me to do that because like playing with silhouette is really hard. As if anyone is in design school, they know that, like, because you can do something that looks really cool, like when you lay the pattern out, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is going to be the coolest silhouette. But then you have to really account for people's muscles and stuff like that. And so something to kind of supplement that, because I kind of felt bad. I was like, oh, I don't know how to like get like the,
like draping,
play with proportions. And so I was like, well, I'm going to try to like find like the best fit, but something to supplement that in my design is what I did is I started playing with how the pattern was cut. And it first started really organically. It was kind of like, oh, I'm cutting a pattern just to make a cool shape, right?
Yeah.
And then I became more attuned to not only like, I kind of like started looking at like a lot of brutalist work, specifically just because it's like very basic shapes, but you kind of see how they play with each other in really interesting ways. And I kind of started keeping that in mind when I started doing like playing with the pattern. And then I kind of like got a little bit more into fitness over the past 2 years.
Sick. I love that.
Not like huge or anything like that where I'm like doing bodybuilding, but just became a more aware of like the body and where your muscles are placed. And so I just kind of found like, oh, like these are natural lines, right? And so they can flow with your body if you put them in the right places.
Yeah.
And so, adjusting the pattern to match that in a way, not necessarily like perfectly, but to a point where it like at least flows with the natural lines that your body has, is just something that I found to be like really interesting, and I will keep in mind when I was designing. Yeah.
And for sorry, Killian, I cut you off. I was just going to give context to our listeners. Karsten's your hoodie, the Swans hoodie. What kind of distinguishes it is that the pattern, the paneling of the piece itself is unconventional, and it achieves all those things you just described. It is cut in a manner where it is supposed to be better fitting, more form fitting. Killian, can I still cut you off still?
Please.
Okay. So like you were just talking about, Karsten, you were talking about like you thinking about the patterns. What was that process? Were you like sewing things? Were you asking for like, are you getting like samples made?
I have no formal training in how to sew. I have none. And that bothered me for so fucking long. Like you have no idea how like, but I really just like started like on Photoshop. And I thought, how could I cut up like this like garment, I know like from pieces that I found. Usually I go to vintage stores and I look for pieces that have nice cuts, and I say like, hey, I'm gonna take the sleeves from this one, body on this one. I do it that way. But a lot of it is then I would kind of like draw the lines on and do that. And then eventually I learned how to like make tech packs and like kind of like do the pattern on through Adobe Illustrator, just like making a tech pack. And then what I actually do is I send that tech pack to my producer who has Clo 3D.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that. And so then we take those pieces of pattern and put them into 3D modeling.
Oh, that's sick. That's sick.
Pattern, yeah.
And for context, I mean, I don't even know if it's context, Karsten. I have taken like sewing classes. I've taken books out of the library about pattern making, and I think I'm just gonna read this and then I'm gonna get it. And I'm like, oh geez, I have no fucking clue. I can't do any of this. So that at least it's a story that we can all relate to.
But it makes sense. Like you don't necessarily need to be on your hands and knees cutting fabric to be able to create shapes and patterns, right?
No,
like, the technology is available to do it in other ways.
I mean, it was like at first, like, because there's such a sort of elitism about like doing it yourself and sewing, and I get it. Like, there's like a lot of people like who went to like the Bunka fashion school for pattern. You know, there's a huge history there, and I respect that for sure. The thing about learning that and learning it like really in depth is that it takes a lot of time, and I went to business school because that was what I needed, more secure, but also it helped me run the design side, the business side of the brand better. But just now with like the technology that you have, it's really possible for you to even like get a pattern, be able to create it from scratch, a pattern, do minor adjustments, put it into the technology we have. That technology is expensive, but it's super possible to do that. And it's actually a little bit less wasteful even, because when you're cutting pattern and you're wasting a lot of fabric. And the great thing is like we have like laser cut like in the factories, so we can get like the super most precise uses out of like the fabric and making sure it's just it's like I don't see a reason that there's anything wrong with it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Can we ask, like, where is the factory?
Factory is in China. So it's this guy out of China who my friend connected me with. It works. It's awesome.
No, I always tell everyone, I mean, like, China has some of the most advanced factories in the world, and so does India. It's silly to think that whatever comes out of there is trash. They make some of the most complex things.
It was so interesting because there's so much xenophobia around like the idea of like made in China means
made in
like
China.
Yeah.
There were people like who talked about it in my comments. And I just had to delete the thread because it was just like, I was like, there's people who are like so like ingrained with that idea that like China doesn't have like, for example, a lot of people still don't think China has like a middle class or something like that. So they're like not even able to engage in like any conversation about it, and it was interesting.
I mean, that's sick though. You were able to find something that really works for you, and they have lasers, guys. They're making clothes with lasers.
And it's a good factory out there. We were able to find, there's a lot of variety of what a factory is like. I think there's definitely an image in everyone's head about like, made in China means unethical,
like a sweatshop. It's like hell in there.
Definitely not the case. You definitely have to be careful. Again, the fact like my process to find a factory took 2 years. One of the most interesting things I did find was I found a factory in Los Angeles that I almost produced through. And I thought, made in America, this is going to be great. And then my buddy who showed me the factory ended up saying, hey man, just to let you know, I think this factory might not be very ethical. And that's
I was just about to say that the flip side, just as made in China doesn't necessarily mean trash, made in other places doesn't necessarily mean good either. Like I've heard that about certain Los Angeles factories. I can think of at least a couple in Portugal that make a lot that are basically just sweatshops for a lot of the big like higher end brands,
Yeah.
And that's like a really broader conversation we need to have as a community, is like stop like associating
Fetishizing.
with either quality or
Right.
ethicality, because like a crazy fact I saw from The Economist is that in 22 of U.S. states, the average garment worker in China is paid more,
Ah!
which is crazy.
Oh no!
That's like, it's just like, it's how it is.
I
And
mean,
it's
that
like,
is wild. And I remember reading, there was like this article somewhere at some point where it was all about like all these things that are made in Italy. And obviously Italy has all of this prestige around it. But like there are a lot of factories specifically in the garment industry where it's like, it's made in Italy. Everybody came from China. All of like the whole system is just Chinese and they just transplanted it on there. So, you know, if you're so invested in buying, you know, a name on a tag, you might get got. Can you tell us? So the Swans hoodie, it's not named after a bird.
no,
It's named after a band.
yeah, it is. I mean, the original kind of thought of it was right, like at the time it was during COVID, and I think like when I was making this design, I was just really getting introduced and interested into like brutalist design theory. And something along with that, I listened to a lot of the Swans, particularly their first few records. Really interesting kind of industrial dark music that just pairs very well with brutalism for some reason. It just kind of, they went together. They're both kind of these weird, ugly, but yet beautiful byproducts of like industrialization.
Yes.
And I just kind of, so much of like my early thoughts around this were just like listening to those Swans records, especially like Filth and like Young Cop. I loved just like thinking about this and getting it done. And yeah, it was just kind of comes down to like something, maybe not less about like the messaging of the band, but more about like just that industrial like sound just kind of really influenced how I thought about like this hoodie and everything with brutalism involved. And yeah,
that's cool and hard. Bonk said, he said a bad word. Now I gotta buy it, don't I? You can't. It's sold out.
It's actually sold out. Yeah. Well, part of like the business structure is that this will definitely be restocked at some point.
Okay.
Probably next year. We will see, there will probably be minor improvements to it, but yeah, like a lot of the idea around my business is like, or the business, I don't know, like it's just like making sure like when we're releasing items, they're like part of a permanent collection. Someone who really inspired me, even though I don't really love their designs, is Christian Powell, where he just releases the same thing every year, because he believes that what he's released is like seasonless. It's like, these are like lifelong products. And that's kind of like the way I kind of go down it. Like, I'm not a huge fan of like the like seasons, and like, obviously there's something to be said about releasing a t-shirt in the summer versus, you know, a parka in the winter.
In the summer. Yeah.
But, you know, like what I also want to do is like make sure like, that we're not kind of going by a trend cycle. I don't want to have that be involved and like always trying to keep up, release the next thing. It's like, once the design is put out into the world, we're going to try to keep that until there's something really wrong with it, or we need you know? Yeah. So truly like the idea of like, these are essentials and they'll be restocked, but it just might be a little while.
Can I ask where, I mean, you mentioned Ken, where do you think like this brand exists in the pantheon of YouTube brands? Because there's a lot. There's a lot.
I think, I mean, I talked to a lot of those guys. I didn't talk to Ken specifically. And I took a lot of inspiration. I watched them all like hawks, straight up, like just like understand it. Where it exists in the pantheon. I mean, someone I talked to a lot about like the business side of it was Owen, because he is
Wyatt?
Hyatt, yeah, Owen Hyatt. Because the way he operates his business, what is more, again, akin to having a long-term view versus like, how are we gonna have a drop be successful?
Yeah,
he doesn't necessarily think about like, is this drop gonna be successful versus is this next year gonna be successful? So thinking long-term is something definitely that I've been doing. There's so many, the whole thing was inspired by like fashion YouTube brands, and I think it's very cool. I definitely want to take it further than that idea.
Yeah.
Fashion YouTube merch.
Yeah.
Because I think that's not necessarily a sustainable like way to think about it.
No.
More, like a true business. But yeah, definitely like my first inspiration for this was Avery Ginsburg, of course, because
Of course, we all of us. Why are any of us here?
Yeah, and I think like, he was like the first of the YouTuber kind of fashion dudes to do something that felt like very true and artistic and original, I think.
Yeah.
Not to say that nobody else is doing that today, but like I think the first of
right
a lot of those people to be doing something where you're like, oh wow, this is something that's not trend based or like a product. This is expression. And so definitely, a lot of respect for him. Other people, Jakov was huge. Keezy was,
I love that guy.
Yeah, he's
Keezy.
awesome. Ray Mia,
yeah,
just crazy. But yeah, like all of those guys, I took little pieces from everybody, I think. Or I don't know if they've all like shown themselves, but I'm, looking at what everyone's doing and considering it for myself. Yeah.
Can I have a hot take, and it is this of like the brands that you were just mentioning, all these like this like incestuous YouTube brands. The one that I kind of, maybe this is just my opinion, I personally think kind of transcends that YouTube brand into like real brand is Bare Knuckles.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? And like, how do you imagine you could pull off the same thing?
Great question. I think respect for Jacob Keller, first of all. Like, he's a cool guy, great guy. I've met him really, really briefly. He did not know who I was, but I knew who he was.
Whatever.
I was like, but yeah, Keller's cool. I would love to see that. I mean, like what Keller did with his brand is amazing. And I think his designs really are universal and they speak to people super well.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to, in a way, I'm a little bit more competitive. I'm very competitive. And I'd love to see myself go further than that. But yeah, like, no, like I'd love to get to the Bare Knuckles level or even get above. So
you, Gillian, please.
Yeah, I'm curious because you mentioned kind of transcending the YouTuber merch thing, right? Yeah. And this is something that I think about a lot, which is that running a brand, a kind of like successful brand, and being like a personality in this industry sometimes don't mesh well. Like, to be successful as a creator, influencer, or whatever, there's kind of a transparency and openness and eagerness to it almost. You're putting a lot of yourself out there. Whereas a lot of the most successful brands have a bit more like mystery or aloofness, this kind of laid back ease or something. Do you ever feel like the kind of juxtaposition of those things?
100%. I feel like that's why like Avery Ginsburg was kind of perfect in a way.
Yeah. He was already aloof.
He was like already kind of aloof. But yeah, like it's interesting. I think like the real truth about like being like designing clothes is that it's like not like a sexy process at all. It's not like, in reality, like if you're very open about it, it's a lot of time spent on a computer or like in a studio, and it's a lot of like calling and saying, hello, do you guys happen to have like this type of material? I saw it in your book and I'd like to know what's the minimum order. That's a lot of money. Okay.
Never mind.
Yep.
It's not super interesting. It's just kind of like anything else. I think the design process and like the inspiration of that is definitely interesting. But yeah, there's definitely a clash. I don't think I'm worried about it at this point. But yeah, like there can be a clash, I think.
I think what the audience really wants to know is, are you going to put some of that meme sauce on the next drop? Is there going to be full out meme clothes?
I don't think so. Like I've done a little bit of that with like collaborations. I think that's cool. Like there's a lot of brands that do that kind of like more meme thing, like Fashion Ruined My Life or like Balenciaga even. Maybe we don't talk about Balenciaga now because they went a little too far. But yeah, I think like for me personally, I don't think I can express myself in that way where it's silly. Like I'm always comfortable, joking around in like an interview or like on my YouTube, but like I don't know how to like do that through clothes in a way. Like honestly, it's just not my language. I'd love to be able to maybe someday. And as I think there might be a chance for that in the future, but like in sort of the way that like Ray Kubo would do it. Because like I don't know if you've ever like CDG is somewhat humorous, and it's like
absolutely,
it's like jokes that like aren't like laugh out loud funny,
jokes that aren't funny,
jokes that like are like more ironic, but like are like way like you have to think about for a long time. Maybe there's something like along the lines of that in humor, but like probably not like me slapping Pepe the Frog on a hoodie.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I think like Tom Brown too could be another great reference or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, Rick is funny. We all know that. He does funny things.
Rick is very funny.
I think I've asked you this before, Karsten. And I think I asked you this a million years ago, because obviously Meme Saint Laurent is like your big Instagram account. Your YouTube stuff is, like you mentioned, is more educational and chill. I think that there's an interesting, not a disconnect, but there's an interesting quality where you might be known for being a funny, hilarious guy, or you might be known for being a completely unfunny, uncharismatic. No, what's going on there? Why is there a disconnect between the intent of like making this garment, these hoodies with like all these cool references? It's brutalism, it's experimental music. Why? How does that happen?
I don't know. I think like that's a great question. Honestly, I don't know, because like I think I've been asking me, like we've definitely talked about this before, where people are like, come on my YouTube and they're like, well, I learned something, but you're not as funny as that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like I just think it's because like very uniquely in my life I had the chance to separate those two things, because in one sense, I excelled at one thing and I put that all on one platform. I excelled at making memes. And then in another, kind of thing, for some reason, just the way I've done YouTube I suppose some videos are a little bit more funny these days, but like less so, like, especially when I first started, I was like, just like the way I did like the educational stuff, it just was like, I didn't know how to like put a joke in it, I think, when I was young.
Right.
A little bit more these days, it's just as I'm kind of loosened up, I guess. But I think it's just because like I had two different areas to put different subject matter, and it just didn't mesh super well. As far as my brand goes, I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of a more of an expression of my more serious side. I'm really not sure.
I think it's just, I'm gonna be honest, I think it's really, really hard to be serious about your memeing within clothing. Like there's such a small subset of brands that have been able to pull it off. Like you mentioned some Balenciaga stuff, some like Vetements stuff. It's still Demna, right? But even then, there's a lot of misses.
Moschino.
Meme stuff for the Moschino, sure.
And that's the thing, is that there's a lot of misses and there's a lot of ways where it can go wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's also just harder to do, like, for example, like when we're talking about like avant-garde art and comedy and kind of irony, it's super hard to do it, I think, with clothing because it's also a product.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's also something you consume. And it also, when you read a funny avant-garde book, like maybe David Foster Wallace, for example, the only thing you're expecting from that is the like consumption or the entertainment.
Yes.
But when you're doing the same thing with a hoodie, like Demna at Balenciaga, there's also an expectation for that to be like a practical item.
Yeah, I think you actually wear
something that has, there's no expectation of what you're going to get out of a book, but there is an expectation of what you get out of a hoodie, and also how much you pay for a hoodie, because it's so tied to capitalism and consumerism, because it's an item that we're used to going to a store, some people every day. Like that's the other thing I think about a lot, is like there are people, like if you go to suburbia, there are people who go shopping every day and buy new things.
That's the life. I wish.
And it's just like, you challenge that, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's like at the end of the day, if you look at a meme, if you're on your phone, you look at a meme, good, that was joyful. But if you go out of your way to buy something that's a meme, you've got I don't know. You've got a different set of priorities.
Well,
Oh wait, we got
I've had this sitting here for like 4 months now, and I've been
Okay.
trying to make a video about it, but I haven't been able to find the way in. I've got this Vetma shirt right here. It says "I'm a virgin,"
but this is
an old T-shirt.
Yeah,
and it's like, so this was probably a retail, right? Like a $600 T-shirt.
Yeah.
And it's an ironic meme shirt that even given all that, only like 5% of people who see it will think that is A, funny, B, interesting, C, worth it. You know, it's so even the best, it's hard. It's hard.
And you own it. And you own said T-shirt.
I own it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy. He's crazy. I don't know what's up with this guy.
I'm wacky.
Well, I mean, we're kind of like, we're at 8:51. So I feel like what I want to do is potentially open it up to the audience to ask Karsten, if you don't mind, if they could ask you questions. Obviously, if they ask you something horrendous, I will not put it on the screen. But the floor is open. If anybody wants to ask any questions while we're just shooting the breeze, we'll pull them up. You know what? Should we ask Karsten about the Telfar thing? Or
I was gonna say we promised somebody in the chat earlier that we'd ask about this. Did you see this thing within the past few days about Telfar changing their pricing model to like the live pricing thing?
I thought I understood it because I actually thought of doing something similar, right? Because I was like, okay, first drop, then next drop, we like price it up, right?
Sure.
Because like if you miss out on the first, like to do a restock is expensive, and then I kind of was like, I don't feel like that's ethical to like pretend that this is scarce. Then I also like Then I read like the next part where it says like it always goes up in MSRP, but like if it like sells out, it'll stay the same. I had no clue why they
exactly
what.
But I want to point out the flip side to what you were just saying is that the accepted way of doing things, when you actually think about it, is also very unethical. That you charge
capitalism isn't ethical.
You charge the people who are most psyched about your product the most MSRP, and then the people who are maybe more on the fence or not sure about it, they end up getting it 6 months later at a steep discount, right?
Now, the one thing I was wondering, because I didn't understand it and it didn't seem like I had any clue on how to understand it.
Yeah.
Is this some sort of Frank Ocean thing? Like Blonde Frank Ocean, where it's like something that's pulling the
and then there's going to be another album that comes right in after it.
Because the reason I thought it is because it directly contradicts everything that a retailer would normally do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, Telfar actually has like deals with retailers. And so my one guess, my best guess genuinely is that this is some stipulation that they're doing to get out of their retailer contracts.
Oh, that's at least that's a take, dude. Because that's what I was thinking. It's like if you're selling products at wholesale price, so that you're selling the wholesaler a half, whatever, and then they're selling it at that half. Wait, how are you going to make any money on it? Aren't you going to lose money, presumably? But maybe it's all just a ploy.
Part of the plan.
I wonder if it's a ploy. That is my best guess, or like. It just, because to me, the whole thing strikes me as like a big fuck you to like retailers, because if you guys don't know, like the being a designer, it's incredibly fucking difficult to deal with retailers.
Sure.
Especially if you have a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
And also because you can lose a lot of money with retailers. It's quite painful.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, most of them will have in their contracts, right, that any unsold stuff you kind of have to eat in a way, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they literally want you to eat it. Like they say, no, you come to the office.
You put on a burger bun.
You come to my office. We're going to have all those hoodies in a pile. You're going to eat this mess. I think it's crazy. My thinking with the Telfar thing is maybe it's a publicity stunt and it's just a loss leader thing and they'll get a lot of press for it. Something like that.
Maybe.
I feel like if you wanted press for something, it would be easily explainable, though.
Yeah, right,
That's
right, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Like, there's always like, my friend has a quote, like, if you have a good business idea, you should be able to just like understand it in less than a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
why I've never invested in any cryptocurrency.
Oh no, yeah, no.
Can't understand it. Sorry. Doesn't make sense.
Now I'm maybe thinking that we should finish the show by going full circle. We've already started walking it back, and now go back to the first subject we talked about tonight.
Jeremy Scott?
Jeremy Scott leaving Moschino.
Okay.
We got a
Thoughts?
few minutes left. Yeah. Did you hear about this? You have any thoughts on this happening?
Man, like, to be honest, I've never had like a huge like cultural connection to Jeremy Scott or Moschino, just because like I feel like
It's not my thing.
it's never been like around like my time or my thing. With that being said, it's been around for a long time. I would guess Moschino, or is it Moschino? I'm not really sure.
I forget.
Is
remember.
probably due for a change in creative director at this point. Like, there's a lot of like, this is like this next year or two is probably going to be a lot of turnover, because we've had a lot of people, like, for example, Burberry finally just got rid of Riccardo Tisci.
Yeah. They kicked him to the curb.
Prime in 10 years. Like, same thing with, honestly, like Balenciaga, like Demna.
Alessandro Michele at Gucci.
Yeah. Like, it's time for like the
new blood
culture a little bit, and that's okay. And yeah, I think it's time.
Yeah. And we're going to have a global recession, so all the brands are going to say, it's not us, it's these designers, we need new ones.
Christopher says Moschino is millennial humor, which I think is accurate. And I think we're on the same page that it's not really our cup of tea.
We're all Zoomers.
I think for me, though, I kind of appreciate anybody who thumbs their nose at fashion while also somehow managing to work within it.
While participating.
He did that very well.
Yeah, it's definitely, it definitely is memes in clothing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a thought, but I lost it. And that's okay. It's live. We're live right now. But
I think we call it there. I think we end the show on your
maybe
missing thought and just leave everybody hanging, and leave you hanging so that you leave being like, oh no. What was it?
Yeah. KARSTEN, how should people follow you? What should they know about you?
Definitely keep me following. We'll be released. Follow me at KARSTEN_KROENING. It's actually pronounced KROENING. It's on Instagram. Look me up. You'll find me. Only follow me because we'll be releasing a lot of stuff soon. Even more than fashion, hopefully, lifestyle and stuff too. So, yep, that's it. He found it. Look me up. Follow me. I'd love to connect, like on LinkedIn, give you a like on your latest job update.
Hey.
Yeah. And while we're talking about it, I still need a job, everyone. Everybody who's watching, I still need a job. It's getting desperate, so I'll do anything. Just yeah. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It was super interesting. I feel like we both learned a lot.
Like galaxy brain in here. I'm just thinking, like, you know, we on the podcast we talk about the brand we're gonna launch. I drew a picture. I think I still have it.
You got to bring it up.
Yeah. There's a lot of additional.
Is that an Among Us? No way.
Among Us. Yeah, it's like an Among Us.
Yeah,
it's like an Among Us from the game Among Us. But I don't know. Maybe in 2 years we'll have a brand, Killian and I. And Killian, you're the punk rocker. What band are we gonna name it after?
Oh crap. Okay, we've got to go like even cooler and more underground, right? How do we go,
cooler,
like, beyond Swans? I don't know. We've got to go. We'll do Godspeed You Black Emperor.
Oh,
okay,
wow.
fine.
Yeah.
That's a fire. There we go. I'll fuck with it. Are you not supposed to swear on the pod? I didn't ask that.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this isn't monetized.
Okay.
So nobody tell that we said swear words. We'll be fine. But
where do they
everybody,
find you, Christian? Where do
you can find me here at least. Find me at Christian_Shabetta on Instagram. Find me at Brave New Wear on YouTube.
And I'm Low
Big
Luxury
K.
here on YouTube and on Instagram. All right. I think that's it. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Catch you later.